To win in a future conflict, the US military may need a lot more dummies. And no, we don't mean the ASVAB waiver in your platoon that still gets the exhaust samples. We mean decoys of all shapes and sizes. From inflatable missile launchers and fighter jets and aircraft hangars to high-tech signal emitters that make the enemy waste precious time and resources sorting what's real from what's not. While tricks and deceit have been a part of warfare since before the Trojan horse, the US military hasn't had much practice in it over the past few decades during the global war on terror. But the war in Ukraine is a wake-up call for how important deception can be in terms of both preserving your own force and confusing the enemy's, even on a battlefield covered in sensors and spy drones. Welcome back to Task and Purpose. I'm Kyle, and today we are going to sneak into the wily world of tactical deception, where troops combine art and science to try to prevent the enemy from making the right decision. But how can the US military really bring it back after decades on the bench? Let's find out. Deception has been a part of warfare since the beginning, but it reached epic levels during World War II. Right before the D-Day invasion in June 1944, the British dropped hundreds of fake paratroopers nicknamed Rupert, kitted out with pyrotechnics to mimic rifle fire in order to lure German troops away from the real landing zones. And it actually worked. Tanks from the 12th SS Panzer Division went on a ghost hunt searching for these Ruperts, thinking that they were real paratroopers instead of reinforcing the beaches, buying time for Allied troops to secure a beachhead. The Rupert trick was just one part of a massive deception effort where the Allies assembled thousands of inflatable or wooden tanks, trucks, aircraft, and even landing craft, all supposedly under the command of General George Patton, whom Hitler was convinced would lead any invasion of Europe. There was fake radio traffic, fake double agents, and fake unit patches even to convince the Germans that the Allies would land at Pas-de-Calais instead of at Normandy. I did a really fun deep dive on this back in June, so you should check it out after this and join the dozens of other viewers who did, because honestly, not many people watched it, but that's okay because I still had fun. And that's all that matters. Meanwhile, over on the Eastern Front, the Russian army got so good at using decoy armies that one German general who fought at Stalingrad said, "We had absolutely no idea about the strength of the Russian troops in the area. There had been nothing here earlier, and suddenly an attack of great force was made, which was decisive." Deception efforts were a huge part of World War II on all sides and in all manners, and deception continued into the Cold War. One of the most celebrated battles of Air Force history was Operation Bolo, where the legendary Colonel Robin Olds and his mythic mustache lured North Vietnamese MiG-21s into attacking his flight of F-4 Phantoms. They did this by disguising them as the less maneuverable F-105s, and to sell the disguise, Olds and his wingmen flew like F-105s, used F-105 radio procedures, and carried the same jamming equipment. Then, when the MiGs took the bait, they shot down 7 of them. One of the longest running deception operations of the Cold War was the so-called missile gap between the Soviet Union and the United States. This is where the Soviets greatly exaggerated the number and capability of their ballistic missiles as a form of deterrence. They took decoys on parade and left them out in fields for the U-2 spy planes to mistake them for the real thing. The campaign was so effective that in 1963, the US intelligence community estimated that the Soviets had as many as 450 intercontinental ballistic missiles, when in reality they had just 91. The decoy and deception business slowed down in the US military with the end of the Cold War, but the war in Ukraine is forcing a serious rethink. Deception is important in warfare because commanders need accurate information to make good decisions. So if the enemy commander's information is false, they'll probably make bad choices that give you an advantage. The war in Ukraine has demonstrated that over and over again. In 2022, just a few months after Russia's full-scale invasion began, Ukraine put out a massive disinformation campaign that it would launch a counteroffensive into the southern Kherson region rather than the eastern Kharkiv region. The Russians moved troops there and were caught by really complete surprise when Ukrainian troops attacked Kharkiv instead. Throughout the war, Ukraine has used inflatable HIMARS rocket launchers, wooden air defense systems, and mortar tubes made out of PVC pipe. A Ukrainian volunteer who makes these decoys told the BBC that a wooden M777 howitzer has been hit by at least 14 Lancet kamikaze drones, each of which costs about $35,000. Troops just keep putting the decoy back together with tape and screws. One Ukrainian officer said about decoys in general, "They're ideal for deceiving the enemy and making them waste expensive resources on nothing. They work, we need more of them." Both Ukraine and Russia have taken to dressing up mannequins in uniforms, sticking them in trenches, and wrapping them in heating wire to make them look warm on thermal cameras. Other decoys even emit radio traffic like real soldiers would, and some sport reflectors that make the decoys stand out on enemy radars. Of course, you really have to sell these decoys to make the enemy believe they're real. Things like tank tracks, ammunition crates, and even porta potties all help, at least with ground-based decoys. In the air, Russia mixes in a lot of cheap imitation drones with its Shahed UAV swarms to make air defense more difficult for Ukraine. One Ukrainian Air Force spokesman told the BBC, "It's 50-50 these days. 50% are real Shahed drones and 50% are imitation drones. Their job is to overload our air defenses and ideally get us to use a missile against a drone that costs peanuts. Sometimes it's a plywood thing that looks as though it was knocked together by some school children." The most surprising thing about the success of decoys in Ukraine is that it's happening on what is perhaps the most surveilled battlefield in history, with vast belts of sensors and high-def cameras watching either side of the front line everywhere. That means the fog of war is still in play, and it likely will be in whatever conflict the US finds itself in the future. So, what can the US military do to prepare? Decoys are starting to play a much larger role in US military exercises. Last year, an Army brigade recorded the electronic emissions of its command post and played it back for the opposing force, also called OPFOR, at an exercise in California. That tricked the OPFOR into attacking the fake command post and giving away their location. Off topic, but if you're serving now and have the chance to play OPFOR during a field exercise, do it. You often get to wear non-uniform stuff, sometimes you might even not have to shave, and you get to act completely erratically, and if your unit is cool, they might even bust out the historic and captured weapons from the armory. Once when I was with 2nd Lad, and that's where the Stinger missile comes from, we just spent a few days walking around the North Carolina woods with AKs and RPGs, screwing up whoever's day we felt like, and it was honestly pretty fun. Alright, let's get back to it. At a separate exercise in Germany, the 3rd Brigade combat team of the 10th Mountain Division put signal emitters next to inflatable artillery guns. The unit commander, Colonel Josh Glonek, said the OPFOR detected the signals and were tricked by the decoys into firing on them. The Air Force is getting in on it too. In 2023, they published photos of what appeared to be an inflatable aircraft hangar during an exercise in Florida. Meanwhile, each of the services is looking to buy more decoys that use radio or other frequencies to lure missiles away from ships, aircraft, and ground troops. Future Air Force fighter squadrons might be kitted out with a ton of miniature air-launched decoys, emitting false signatures of Allied aircraft. Or maybe each Navy destroyer might be escorted by a group of drone submarines, some of which could do nothing but put out fake signatures to look like destroyers. These are all things, among a lot of other things, that are being worked on right now. We're not even scratching the surface here, but in an era where logistics are under threat from long-range missiles, maybe it'd also help to put out some decoy ammo dumps or refueling points too. The goal in all this is to overwhelm the enemy's decision-making process. It's kind of like, using your car's alarm to find your car in a parking lot, but every car's horn honks back. Jorge Rivero, a retired Marine and Russian military analyst, told us that a network of hundreds of thousands of sensors can be degraded by taxing it with a lot of noise, which increases the amount of information that analysts have to process. That, in turn, increases the chance of error, like wasting a $1 million missile on an inflatable, or sending friendly troops to chase ghosts, or worse, fall into a trap. But decoys and deception are practically worthless if you don't have the support around them, so let's talk about the information domain around it and other buzzwords and jargon. We've been talking mostly about deception at the tactical level, but there are massive strategic implications for knowing how to do deception right. Between 1968 and 1973, for example, the Egyptian army held a series of training exercises on the Israeli border, so that when they actually invaded in 1973, the Israelis were caught completely by surprise, and thus began the 1973 Arab-Israeli War. A more recent example was Operation Midnight Hammer, where an unconfirmed number of US B-2 stealth bombers flew west of the Pacific to distract from the main strike package that left from Whiteman Air Force Base in Missouri. On June 22nd, the B-2s that took off from Missouri struck Iranian nuclear facilities. At the heart of all this is a larger concept called information warfare, which involves using cyber, electronic warfare, public affairs, reconnaissance, intelligence, and a bunch of other tools like decoys to affect adversary behavior and protect against the enemy's attempts to do the same. Over the past few years, the Air Force, Navy, Army, and Marine Corps have stood up information units to fight in this domain, where knowing is not just half the battle, it's the whole war. That's a G.I. Joe reference for you 80s and 90s kids out there. You're welcome.
And knowing is half the battle. G.I. Joe!
But the issue is that many of the information warfare units activated so far work at the higher headquarters level. The Army's new Theater Information Advantage detachments, for example, work for commands headed by 3- or 4-star generals, while Marine information groups work for the 3-star headquarters that oversee Marine Expeditionary Forces. That's great for telling senior leaders how to work deception into their plans, but it doesn't spread information warfare down to the rank and file the way we see it being done in Ukraine. So, how do we get to that? We spoke with Benjamin Jensen, a senior fellow at the Center for Strategic and International Studies, another think tank, and he listed 3 factors that could help the military prepare for information warfare in a future fight. One factor is making information warfare a regular part of how units are evaluated during exercise and prior to being certified for deployment. It's more complicated than just rolling out a realistic HIMARS decoy and hoping it will work. Marine Lieutenant Colonel Ryan Tice, who studies deception and warfare, told us that for deception to work, you must know how your adversary thinks and the different ways that they can and will observe the decoy. Just as important, the decoy needs to be coordinated with a larger goal and operations so that it actually accomplishes something with maximum effectiveness and minimum risk. He said, effective deception demands disciplined thinking about our adversary and warfare, as undisciplined decoying operations are merely performative and will never achieve their desired effect. On top of having the right mental model for information warfare, troops also need the tools of the trade in order to practice it. That's where resourcing comes in. Maybe every tank or infantry company needs to have multiple decoys or signal emitters to work with as part of their standard loadout, so that they can make it part of their battle plans. But for effective resourcing, you need this second factor, a focal point to serve as a champion for deception. One model for how to go about it could be what the Pentagon did in the Replicator Initiative, where it set aside money to buy thousands of drones across the service. But to make that resourcing permanent usually requires new career tracks, organizations, and units. That brings us to the third factor, which is to have specialty groups that can focus on information warfare, serve as centers of expertise, and help other units put on more elaborate deceptions, for example. We did this in World War II with units like the 23rd Headquarters Special Troops, where about 1,100 soldiers made up the Army's first mobile, multimedia tactical deception unit, according to the National World War II Museum. The Navy, meanwhile, had the beach jumpers, who use loudspeakers and radar-reflective decoys to trick enemy troops into defending the wrong landing zones. I bet this is your first time hearing about the beach jumpers, because honestly, it was my first time until I saw this script from David. It is a really cool story though, where basically really small groups would simulate entire beach landings by setting smoke screens and piloting landing craft packed with speakers and transmitters while dragging decoys behind them to make it look like a full-size landing. It worked really effectively, and the first time it was used was during Operation Husky, so if you're curious, go check that out. With all that's going on in Ukraine, maybe it's time we learn more about things like the beach jumpers and more. Rivero told us this needs to be a whole of force endeavor. Company, battalion, and regimental commanders today never had to think about their missions in Afghanistan in a semi-permissive environment. So we need to break into their heads that this is a different type of conflict and show them how they can actually use deception operations and decoys at scale. Because if the commander doesn't believe in it, no one is going to really believe in it. This isn't really an area of warfare that gets a lot of attention these days because it's not filled with, big high-tech things. So let us know what you think in the comments about it. And I mean, honestly, some great ideas could probably come out in the comments about what the US military and others could do to really make deception and decoys effective on today's battlefield where, as we said, it's just covered in sensors and high def infrared cameras are everywhere. So let us know what you think in the comments. All right, now it's channel update time, and David Rosa wrote this script and Savvy edited the video, and of course they all did awesome work, so I have to thank them for that as usual. And I'll keep this one kind of short. I've been giving out my email, kyle.gunn@taskandpurpose.com. I think I'm mostly caught up on the emails, though I probably need to go into my spam. So if you're waiting on a response, it'll come. I've gotten a lot, which is really great, and I've really been enjoying them. So keep sending me emails if you need to talk, you need to do, you need anything, you have recommendations, ideas, let me know. Let's see, I'll be going to SHOT Show towards the end of January, which I guess is you're watching this on, I think, the 9th. Pretty soon, so let me know if there's anything there. I'll be going to some of the range days and talking to the industry people and doing real journalism, because that's what Task and Purpose does. We do journalism. We had Pentagon reporters before we didn't sign that thing from the Pentagon. We do good work, so go check out the website at taskandpurpose.com there. I'm wearing a Claymore patent shirt. Pretty simple, it's just the Claymore Mine patent on a shirt. You can go buy it. It's $25 at store.taskandpurpose.com. Use code ACTUALLYWATCHED and you get 10% off. That's a big chunk of the profit we make on these, but it's whatever. I just really like the shirts that we have, so go check it out if you want. We have other stuff, mouse pads, coffee mugs, stickers, things like that. Yeah, that's really all I got. Again, thanks for watching. Thanks for everything. Thanks for what I hope is going to be, and I'm pretty confident is going to be, a really great 2026 here, but it wouldn't be great if it wasn't for all of you. So thank you sincerely. Really, really thank you. That's it. I'm Kyle, your friendly ginger producer man. You are all dismissed. Thank you so much for being here. I will see you next time.